Alright folks, let's talk about national debt. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but what does it really mean? How does it affect us and why should we care? Let's break it down in simple terms. Imagine the US government has a giant credit card. This card is used to pay for all sorts of things that keep the country running smoothly. Every time the government spends more than it takes in through taxes, it's like whipping out that card. This means borrowing money to cover the difference. That's the national debt, the total amount of money the government owes to others. This debt accumulates over time as the government continues to borrow. Think of it like this: you buy a fancy new hat on your credit card. You look fabulous, sure, but you now owe money to the credit card company. You look fabulous, sure, but you now owe money to the credit card company. The same principle applies to the government. The government does the same thing, but instead of hats, it's things like roads, schools, and the military. These are essential services and infrastructure that benefit everyone. Now, some debt can be okay. In fact, it can be beneficial. Just like taking out a loan to buy a house can be a smart move, borrowing money for important projects can help the country grow. These investments can lead to a stronger economy and better quality of life. But, and this is a big but, just like with your credit card, if the debt gets too big, things can get messy. High levels of debt can lead to financial stress and economic instability. And trust me folks, things are starting to look a little messy. The national debt has been growing for years, and it's becoming a significant concern for economists and policymakers alike. Over the years, the US has faced several economic challenges, and the national debt has played a role in many of them. From the Great Depression to the 2008 financial crisis, high levels of debt have often been a contributing factor. Today, the national debt is at an all-time high, and it's growing every day. This has led to debates about how to manage it and what steps need to be taken to ensure a stable economic future. Some argue that we need to cut spending and reduce the debt, while others believe that investing in growth and infrastructure is the way forward. It's a complex issue with no easy answers. For everyday Americans, understanding national debt is crucial. It affects everything from interest rates to job opportunities and even the value of the dollar. By staying informed, we can make better decisions and advocate for policies that benefit everyone. So the next time you hear about national debt on the news, remember that it's more than just a number. It's a reflection of our country's financial health and our collective responsibility to manage it wisely. With careful planning and responsible management, we can ensure a prosperous future for generations to come. Let's work together to understand and address the challenges of national debt. Thanks for joining us on this journey to understand national debt. Stay informed, stay engaged, and let's build a better future together. Let's take a peek at the Federal Debt Total Public Debt, GFD-BTN graph, shall we? Don't worry, I'll make it painless. This graph shows us how much the US government owes over time. See that line going up? Way up? Yeah, that's not a good sign. It's like watching a toddler stack blocks higher and higher. You just know it's going to end in a teetering mess. The national debt has been growing for decades, but in recent years, it's been shooting up faster than a rocket powered by Red Bull and regret. We're talking trillions of dollars, folks, trillions. Even Dr. Evil would be impressed by those numbers. Okay, so the national debt is big and getting bigger. So what? Why should we care? Well, for starters, a high national debt can put a serious damper on the economy. Think of it like this: you're at a buffet and you've piled your plate high with delicious food. Problem is, you're so full from all the previous trips that you can barely take a bite. That's kind of what happens with too much debt. The government has to use more and more of its money just to pay off the interest on the debt, like those pesky minimum payments on your credit card. This means less money for things like education, infrastructure, and scientific research, the things that actually make the country better. High national debt can also make the economy more vulnerable to shocks. Imagine you're driving a car with wobbly tires. You might be fine cruising down a smooth road but hit a pothole, and you're in for a bumpy ride. A country with high debt is like that car with wobbly tires. Any unexpected event, a global pandemic, a financial crisis, a rogue squirrel chewing through important cables, could send the economy into a tailspin. And nobody wants that, folks, not even the squirrel. Section 5. The price of borrowing, interest rates, and national debt. In this section, we will delve into the intricate relationship between interest rates and national debt, and how this dynamic impacts the economy at large. Remember that giant credit card we talked about? Imagine it as a symbol of the nation's borrowing habits. Just like individuals use credit cards to make purchases they can't immediately afford, Governments borrow money to fund various projects and services. Well, just like with your own credit card, the government has to pay interest on the money it borrows. And guess what? The interest on this borrowed money can add up quickly, especially when the debt is substantial. This is where things get interesting. The more debt there is, the higher those interest rates can go. Why? Because lenders, whether they are individuals, institutions, or foreign governments, start to see the growing debt as a risk. They become concerned about the government's ability to repay its loans, because lenders get a little nervous when they see a borrower racking up huge debts. They start to worry about whether they'll actually get their money back. This nervousness translates into higher interest rates, as lenders demand more compensation for taking on additional risk. They start to worry about whether they'll actually get their money back. To mitigate this risk, they charge higher interest rates. This is similar to how a bank might charge a higher interest rate on a loan to someone with a lower credit score. To compensate for the risk, they charge higher interest rates. This means that the cost of borrowing increases, making it more expensive for the government to finance its activities. Higher interest rates can also have a ripple effect on the broader economy. Higher interest rates mean the government has to shell out even more money just to service its debt, leaving even less for other important things. This can lead to budget cuts in essential services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure, affecting the quality of life for citizens. It's a vicious cycle, like trying to outrun a bear on a treadmill. You're working hard but not really getting anywhere. The government finds itself in a constant struggle to manage its debt while trying to meet the needs of its people. This cycle can be difficult to break, and it requires careful financial planning and policy decisions to navigate successfully. Policymakers and economic advisors play a crucial role in managing this delicate balance. They must consider various strategies to reduce the national debt and control interest rates, such as implementing fiscal policies, adjusting tax rates, and prioritizing spending. Successful economic reforms can lead to a more stable financial environment, lower interest rates, and a reduction in national debt. This in turn can free up resources for important public services and investments, ultimately benefiting the entire nation. In conclusion, understanding the relationship between interest rates and national debt is essential for grasping the complexities of economic policy. By managing debt responsibly and keeping interest rates in check, governments can create a more prosperous and stable future for their citizens. Section 6. Trapped by debt, future policy challenges. High national debt can also tie the hands of future policymakers. Imagine you inherit a house from your eccentric Uncle Bob. Sounds great, right? Except Uncle Bob was a hoarder, and the house is filled to the brim with rubber ducky collections and old newspapers. That's kind of what it's like inheriting a large national debt. Future generations are stuck dealing with the consequences of our borrowing habits, limiting their ability to address other challenges and invest in the future. They might want to tackle climate change, reduce poverty, or finally figure out what the deal is with those black helicopters. But with a mountain of debt looming overhead, it's going to be a lot harder. Section 7. Debt and real-world impacts. Okay, so we've talked about the big picture stuff, but how does all this affect you, the average American? Let's break it down. Well, for starters, a weaker economy means fewer jobs, lower wages, and less money in your pocket. When businesses struggle, they often cut back on hiring or even lay off employees. This can make it harder for you to find a job or keep the one you have. Remember that dream vacation you've been saving up for? The one where you imagined yourself lounging on a sunny beach, sipping a cool drink? Yeah, you might have to put that on hold. Travel costs can skyrocket when the economy is unstable, and you might find that your savings don't stretch as far as you hoped. And that fancy new hat? Forget about it. When prices go up and your income doesn't, you have to make tough choices about what you can afford. High national debt can also lead to higher taxes down the road. Governments need money to pay off their debts, and one way they get it is by increasing taxes. Remember those future policymakers we talked about? The ones who will be making decisions that affect our economy? They're going to need a way to pay off all that debt, and raising taxes is one way to do it. This means you could end up paying more in taxes, leaving you with less money to spend on the things you need and want. And raising taxes is one way to do it. This can affect everything from your paycheck to the cost of goods and services. So, yeah, this whole national debt thing, it's not just some abstract economic concept, it's something that can have a direct impact on your daily life. It's not just some abstract economic concept, it's a real issue that can affect your job, your savings, and your overall financial well-being. It has real-world consequences for all of us. From the way we manage our household budgets to the opportunities available to our children, the national debt influences many aspects of our lives. So next time you hear about the national debt, remember that it's not just a number. It's a factor that shapes our economic reality. Section 8, wrapping it up, key takeaways. All right, class, let's review. National debt is the total amount of money the government owes to others. It's been growing for decades and is now at a record high. This is a problem because it can slow down the economy. It makes us more vulnerable to economic shocks. It can lead to higher interest rates. It limits the options of future policymakers. It can impact your personal finances. So, what's the solution? Well, that's a whole other can of worms, folks. But the first step is understanding the problem and why it matters. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go drown my sorrows in a vat of ice cream. Anyone want to join me?